we'll go ahead and jump in. So thank you for tuning in. I'm going to include some announcements that came out in the M365 Copilot section. Came out just before build, just in case if you didn't see them, just to recap them, and then we'll get into the really exciting stuff that we got at build itself. So with that, I don't know if everybody saw, but we got a new shiny Copilot app. So this has started shipping. It should be in your tenant already or very, very soon if it's not already. I'm seeing lots of claps, so great. Yes, my absolute favorite thing is, other than it being, more slimline, easier to use and all that, is, hey, I can actually now edit an agent by clicking on the agent like think and not having to go back into the Copilot editor to actually edit an agent. So yay, it's usable now. The other big thing is notebooks. And if you haven't tried them, I suggest jumping in and trying them. This is now allow you to pull your thoughts together so you can streamline complex workflows by combining natural language, code execution, data visualization, all in an interactive environment, right? So it makes it much easier to keep track of what you're doing without a lot of cut and paste between different environments, right? So a quick example would be maybe you're a business analyst who wants to understand some sales trend, right? So you start with a question: what were the top selling products in each quarter of 2024? You could then upload a CSV of sales data. The great thing about it is the notebook can generate Python code to clean, filter, analyze, create charts, all of that for that data. You can then ask follow-up questions like which region had the highest growth based on that data. And so it just allows you to play with your data, play with your prompts, and keep everything right there together. I'm a huge fan of notebooks because before I was doing this, I was having to cut and paste a lot of things from Copilot or competitor products into OneNote, right? So Create got a whole big facelift. So this is amazing because now instead of just being able to create an image and edit an image, I can create a poster, I can create a video, I can create a form, as well as all the Office 365 documents, right? So I can create a Word doc, a presentation, an Excel workbook, all from Create, and it's getting very, very good. The photo editing is still a little, if you've ever tried to remove a background or anything else, it doesn't do the bestest job, but it gets an A+ for trying. If you didn't see this one, this is actually a big deal to me, right? Because users expect AI assistants to understand details about their work, their team, their projects, previous questions that I've asked, right? Copilot, the memory and personalization were created to address this need or this lack, right? And so how does it work? So as you use Copilot, it passively builds a memory of what it deems are useful facts, such as your preferred document formats, right? Frequent collaborators, ongoing projects, prompts that you've used in the past, the things that you're working on and researching. This memory allows it to tailor its responses and proactively suggest content and just makes it more like an AI assistant, right? Because now it understands how I like to work, how I like to format things, and it gives it to me without me having to ask it with a follow-up prompt. So this is huge. Now, for organizations where this is scary, of course, IT admins can turn this off. You also have controls to be able to go in there and ask it to forget specific things. And there's also an incognito mode that will allow you to say, hey, I'm going to work with sensitive data and I don't want memory to keep this for security reasons, right? Sorry about that. Cell phone decided to go off and I hadn't had it muted. This isn't quite as exciting, but the agent store gets a facelift, or I should say, hey, we actually get an agent store. this is very polished, it's very streamlined. It also uses a little bit of magic under the covers to look at what you're doing and the types of agents and where you're working and what your colleagues that you collaborate with often are using, and then bubble those agents up to the top. So it's not just an alphabetical listing, it can actually go out and proactively suggest agents. So the store getting much, much better, as well as prettier, right? Another one is people skills. So there's kind of two facets to this. There's people skills, and then there's the skills agent, which uses people skills. So people skills is a new kind of data layer that looks at everything that you're doing. So questions you've answered in Teams, email, Viva Engage, all those kinds of things, what content you're working on, everything that you're doing in the Office ecosystem, and it picks up where you're a subject matter expert. So unlike other, skills tools where you had to go and define, hey, here are all the things I'm good at, right? So number one for me would always be sarcasm. Number one skill set, hands down. This will infer that automatically. Now, I have to say, I haven't got to kick the tires on this, so I don't know how well it will pick up on sarcasm. And, hey, being mean to your fellow employees is actually the way you show affection. We'll see how that works out. But it should be pretty cool in that it can go and connect me now with experts without relying on people to go, hey, I'm really smart at that. It's looking at what they're doing and responses they're giving and go, oh, this guy must really know what he's talking about. Who talked about? So again, there's the skills service token, and then as well as the agent that is going to be coming out that will consume that service. Look for that. I know it says May on the screen. I would probably look for it in your tenants closer, probably beginning of June, right? And with that, let's get to my favorite part. So this is fine tuning for M365 Copilot, right? I don't know if anybody got to see, I believe this session number was BRK177. If somebody wants to Google that and keep me honest, that would be super amazing. So what is it? Well, as we kind of talked about with memory and personalization, right? AI assistant is great, saves me a ton of time. I mean, I use this thing every day, and it's getting kind of sad how much I run and use it to generate content and do all kinds of things and make my life easier. But it's still very, very generic, right? It was trained on the internet. It doesn't understand anything Microsoft. So it doesn't understand that I'm doing these things because I'm driving content for my Connect. And for everybody, that's the Microsoft review process, right? So that's our employee reviews. We do them every 6 months. And so it also doesn't understand our OKRs and what we're trying to drive. It doesn't understand my commitments, the things that I've been tasked to go do. It makes me more efficient, and that's super helpful, but it doesn't have any of the Microsoft ease. A better example of that is, as you can imagine, Microsoft has this huge sales organization, and they generate a lot of RFPs and things like that. And so, we respond to a lot of RFPs and things like that. And we have templates and we do all these things. We use Copilot a lot to do that content for us. But we still have to kind of model it into the Microsoft format, right? We have to give very long prompts to say, hey, I want it in this format and do it in this specific way and do all that. So wouldn't it be great if Copilot could understand kind of that knowledge, formatting, tone, all of those things in the output of the content that I want, right? So that's the idea behind fine tuning, right? So the approach kind of is in 3 major areas, right? Want it to talk like you, right? And so that kind of goes into supervised tuning. And we're going to step through that in just a second. Thinks like you. This is reasoning fine tuning, okay? So how do you go through these business processes? How do you think? What's important? How do these things impact this process, right? And then agentic fine tuning. And that is kind of the highest level where now I have a coworker instead of just a resource. So what we announced in the EAP, which is early adopter program, because Microsoft, we have to acronym everything. If it's got more than 2 words, it gets an acronym. Is kind of this top level, right? Supervised tuning. And that's what we announced. And that's what's going to be coming out in June. So how does it work? And this is kind of high level. Again, BRK 177, if I got that right, would be the session to go watch. But you start with your M365 data, and then as well as any external data, right? We have all those Power Platform connectors, those wonderful, 1200, 1400, 1500, I don't know. I feel like they're always lying on their slides and incrementing the numbers just to mess with me. But we have all those connectors that we can go and get this third-party data. We start with our data. And then we layer on fine-tuning on top of it. But it's not just the simple of, hey, we have our model that was trained on all this internet data, and we're going to take our business data and shove that in there too, and then voila, it's going to be amazing. Way more nuanced than that. So it's more than just your data, right? It's how was the task done, right? Who all was involved? How do we measure success that task? Who has access to it? So inside of fine-tuning, the product team has created what they call recipes, right? So to have specific outcomes, here's the recipe of how we train the model to get those recipes. And here's all the things that we need to add in to make that recipe work. You'll notice on there, you see ACLs. So traditionally, when we train a model, we're training it with all this data, and anybody that has the model has access to the data. So like if you put the data in there, everybody's gonna have access to it. Well, as part of fine tuning, we've introduced ACLs so that part of that process is you will go in and say, hey, who has access to this knowledge in the model, right? And so that's one aspect of it. And so what then? Well, then you take that fine tuning model and we create an agent out of it. Or actually, before I get to that, so that fine tuning is kind of intended for a task automation, right? So we're not fine tuning a general model, we're fine tuning a model for a specific outcome. So some of those outcomes, and you'll see the ones bolded, those are what's coming out in the kind of first wave. Document generation, right? So this allows us to then, hey, when we generate a document, what are all the clauses that we need? What's the structure? What's the format? What's the tone? What's all this? As well as what's the knowledge, right? Again, that knowledge is just one piece of that puzzle. And so those top 3, document generation, summarization, and expert Q&A, not just Q&A, but expert Q&A, are the 3 that are going to ship first, right? For fine-tuning these models. So, which leads me to the next thing, which is, so if we look at it this way, you have a model maker that is going to go in the fine-tuning UI, fine-tune the model with the help of a subject matter expert, and then you're going to evaluate the outcome, right? And so this might be an iterative process where you have to go through it a few times. And then once you're happy, then the model goes to the model catalog, right? So it's not doing anything yet. It's just sitting in a model catalog. We're then going to create an agent, right, that is going to use that specific model to do the task. So we saw that, hey, we had subject matter expert, we had, expert Q&A, we had document creation and summarization, right? So we would create an agent to create specific documents. So we might have many fine-tuned models. So here at Microsoft, for responding to an RFP, we might have an agent for responding to RFPs. If we get all kinds of questions about security around Office 365 services and things like that, we might have a different agent for responding to that because it's different knowledge and we do it in a different way, right? So the last thing is of course, this is going to have access management for you to control, hey, who can create models, who has then access to those models individually, as well as model governance, and then during a reporting of where those models are used, and who is using them and what agents are tied to them and all the visibility and governance that you would want. But what I wanted to leave you with was the fine tuning is not for M365 Copilot in the general sense. So it is not going to be kind of, hey, all of my users have M365 Copilot and they use it for their general operations and things. We want to take it and train it on all our data and then shove it back out there so that it has our data mixed in there. And that's not what this is for. This is for specific tasks with specific outcomes. And then we create agents to then leverage those highly tuned models. This is how we take it even further from just got a generic AI that is going to reason over our subject matter. Then we have to be prompt engineers to write these mega prompts to get it to function in the way we want. We can do that in the model and make it so much easier for our users to consume it, right? So this lowers that prompting threshold and makes that consumption so much better. And the last or second session is the new-ish dev tools. And I added the ish because you're going to see as we kind of get in here, we have the new M365 Agents Toolkit, the new M365 Agents SDK. And I say newish because if you've been around and you're in the dev space using VS Code and you've used TTK or the Teams Toolkit, then you're like, the M365 Agents SDK is not new. It's an evolution of the TTK, right? The Teams Toolkit. So it does have new capabilities and features, but it is an evolution and not brand spanking
that
new.
was the
Yes, what she said.
to the funding.
And then the second is the Teams AI library. So again, while it's new, it's not really that new because what we did is we took a bunch of the components that you use to create those agents. Jeff, do your job. Mute that person. Love you.
I'm looking.
I got it, Chris.
And so the Teams AI library is just, hey, we took a collection of the things that you're always using in these projects, and we're going to combine them into one library and make it super easy to reference and put everything together and just make your life a little easier as a developer. Boom, Teams AI library was born. So that's why I said newish. The last session we're going to get into is agent management and reporting. So anybody from, IT operations in here, from IT security, you're going to love this section because, you guys have been nailing me to the wall for months on this stuff. When we first launched embedded agents, so I'm talking about building an agent from Copilot Chat, not the super cool Copilot Studio, not the big boy toys, but, the little kid toys, the embedded builder, those went into a black. Those sat in a Cosmos DB that you couldn't see. You didn't have any inventory of. You couldn't see who they were shared with. It was a black hole. And since then, the product team has slowly given us some peeks into it. We're not quite there yet, but by the end of June, you should be very, very, very happy, right? So full inventory, including metadata being, hey, what actions does it have? What knowledge sources does it have? Who have they shared this thing with, right? Access controls so that you can go in there and control, hey, who can do what? Maybe I don't like that. I'm going to block that one. As well as some lifecycle management. So a question that I always get hit with is, hey, Chris, what happens when Bob leaves the company and he's that agent? So this gives you the ability to go out and reassign that and all that, as well as stage rollouts. Guys, I'm going to jump in chat and answer as many questions as I can when I get done. Hopefully, Jeff and David are jumping on those, but maybe not. The other big problem, so, okay, done. We've got some governance controls. We get inventory, we can see what's going on, and we get some control. The other big thing is, hey, man, we had one billing plan for Copilot Chat. Again, not talking about Copilot Studio where we have environments and all this cool stuff that's grown up, right? It's been around for forever, where I can segment billing policies by environments and all that. For Copilot Chat, we had one billing plan to rule them all, right? Very Lord of the Rings. Now we're introducing group level billing, right? This isn't out quite yet. Again, I'm looking more towards the late part of June. As with everything Microsoft, even though it says Q2, that might bleed into Q3. We use funny calendars around here, but we're getting group level billing. So I can now create groups and I can do billing plans to those, and then I can organize my agents into those groups and have a much better experience, right? I can also put spending limits in, both hard and soft spending limits. I can put alerting in to let me know when thresholds are hit. So all the things that have been blocking us and preventing us from, hey, I don't want to enable this because I could be signing up for a huge bill. Well, now not only can we see what's going on, but now we can control billing and we can control it for different groups, right? So if we have a very business sensitive group that is actually creating really good content, we can give them a very high billing policy. And if we have an island of misfits, then we can give them a very low billing policy because we don't trust them as far as we can throw them. Now, usage insights, I'm going to kind of jump into that. So you will see new consumption reports, right? So not only if you go into the Mac, the Microsoft Admin Center, not under the Copilot banner, but if you go down to usage and reports, you're going to see the new consumption reports. I don't know why my words won't work today. And so again, these are going to kind of come out in iterations. You're going to see that the goal is to get you the ability to see all the way down to the per user agent billing, so I can look at each user and see what agents are using and how much consumption for each agent, but also the inverse, so I can look at an agent and see how many users are using it and all of their consumption, right? And so you will be able to drill down from a very macro level of, hey, this is across my tenant, what's the consumption, and all up across all my billing plans to per billing plan down to per user and even per agent. Now I want to set your expectation. These are going to kind of come out in waves, right? So we had many levels there. So first level is already out. You should all see that in your tenants right now. The getting down to the user and agent level will come soon, but it's not there yet. At least not when I checked my tenant this morning, it still wasn't there. So with that, boom, I'm going to turn it over to David Hathaway, the man, the myth, the legend for low code agents, all the really cool build announcements. And I'm so jealous right now.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to make sure I keep myself on time and start my timer. And I'm rocking my Copilot Studio Bear shirt for everyone. Got to rep the brand. Lots of announcements coming out in build for Copilot Studio. So let's jump right into it. Let me see. I need to take control first. All right, sweet. So we're actually going to start with Power Apps. This is an agent-focused kind of recap of build, but psych. Most of the announcements are Copilot Studio, but we are going to start in Power Apps. There were two kind of highlight announcements in the Power Apps space. So let's jump into those. The first one is Solution Workspace. So for those of you who were familiar with Plan Designer, which was announced back at the Power Platform Conference in September, I think it was, sometime in the fall, that has been in preview and is now generally available. They kind of renamed it Solution Workspace, and they're adding additional features to it. So if you're not familiar with it, what is this? It's a tool and capability within the platform, within Power Platform, to accelerate the planning phase of any project that you're working on. So when you're thinking about requirements, user personas, you can take like chicken scratch on the back of a napkin, upload it, give the tool some requirements. It has a whole suite of undercover SaaS agents in the background that basically ingest all that content, ingest the intent, the business problem you're trying to solve, and then tries to map it to user personas, generate process diagrams, build a data model on the back end in schema, and also start building solution artifacts. So that includes Dataverse tables, obviously, for the data schema, Power Apps, both Canvas and model driven. Agents was one of the big announcements. That's coming as one of the different artifacts that will be able to be generated in the Solution Workspace. And obviously, all of these things, you can continue chatting with the tool, with the agents on the back end to continue refining your plan. You can actually manually go edit those artifacts. And then when you're done kind of riffing and using the AI capabilities of the tool, you can go deploy all those artifacts into a solution, and start, doing the finishing, refining of it, applying branding, and those sorts of things. But really, it helps build a holistic plan that targets the business problem, as opposed to, I have this big business problem. Well, I'm going to start with one app and then build some flows. And you kind of end up with the blinders on a little bit, focused on the individual component that you're working on at the time. And this really opens up the aperture to make sure that you're tackling the business problem and providing business value, and also accelerating that process with a whole suite of agents at your fingertips. And right, of course, we're going to be continually improving the capabilities of those agents and adding additional agents to that solution workspace to just continually make it more powerful. The next announcement in the Power App space is Agent Feed. And no, this is not like, hey, I have an agent, it's my Tamagotchi, it's time to sleep, it's time to feed. No, this is like your social media feed for your agents, right? It's a whole list of all your different agents across your applications, where you can oversee, collaborate with those agents when those agents need a human to come in and either approve something, provide additional information that it might not be able to get from knowledge sources, basically respond whenever human in the loop is needed. You'll be able to go in and take action. You also just get a history of what all the agents that are collaborating and working on your behalf, what they're doing, what they've accomplished already, what processes are potentially done, and you can manage those things. One of the capabilities that is coming, I don't think it's available yet, I think it's part of the early access program that's noted on the bottom of this slide, is suggestions for next best action. So my agent has either completed its work, but it has an understanding of the context and process in which it's operating. How can I suggest to individuals, hey, maybe kick off this other agent, or maybe go take this action to continue pushing the work forward? One really cool thing about this agent feed is, as far as we're aware, we are the first platform on the market with this capability. So this is very, it's bleeding edge, and no one else has this capability. So we're really excited about that. So those were the two Power Apps announcements that I wanted to cover. We had a number, before I moved to Copilot Studio, we have a number of other Power Apps announcements that'll just kind of like hit off the top of my head. We had bring your own code. So you can now bring React code, deploy it on Power Platform, and take advantage of all the Power Platform governance and management capabilities, but basically bringing that React code. My understanding, and I'm implicitly reading between the lines a little bit, the product group is intending to expand that beyond just React code, so you can bring other different code bases and deploy it in Power Apps. And similarly, there were capabilities announced for Power Pages, which is separate pillar, but you can, additional capabilities to be working with code for developers who like to go code first, for both Power Apps and Power Pages. I know with Pages, one of the new capabilities is, as you're coding in VS Code, you can preview your Power Page right from the VS Code IDE. Let's see, what else was Power Apps off the top of my head? I think that might be it. Yeah, bring your own code. All right, let's dive into Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio, just to level set, I think most of you on the call hopefully are familiar. Under the covers, it's the engine that allows you to build agents that plug into M365 Copilot and extend those capabilities. It's also driving like declarative agents, where you spin up an agent within the context of a SharePoint site. So it's our it's our engine and our tool for building agents without using code on the Microsoft platform, and it's leveraged under the covers in the M365 world. But then you can also just go hit the tool yourself and build standalone agents, whether that be task-based or autonomous agents, to go do additional work on your behalf. So we're unleashing the power of virtual agents. And yes, that's a little plug to the product predecessor before we renamed it. So Easter egg for all you guys who have been around the block a minute. The first announcement, and this has been one of those top announcements that just about everyone has been asking for when it came to Copilot Studio and the capabilities, we announced a public preview coming in June for multi-agent systems. So being able to orchestrate across multiple agents so that you can basically ask it to execute something, or a trigger can start an agent, but that agent can be wired up to other agents that are very task specific and focused, and that agent can call other agents to help it accomplish its work. So initially in June, what's going to be going into public preview is connecting to other agents built in Copilot Studio. The product group has announced that they're working on being able to wire up agents that are built on Fabric in Azure AI Foundry, agents built with the M365 SDK. So obviously those being in our own platform will likely be fast followers there. And then we also announced, before build actually dropped, the A2A or agent-to-agent protocol that Google has developed that we're adopting it's probably an industry standard. We're looking for it to be that. And so as we implement that and expand those capabilities there, you'll be able to be integrating with agents off the Microsoft platform as well, right? This is the new Microsoft, not the old Microsoft. We're the open source Microsoft. So we want you to be able to access all your resources, capabilities, and solutions wherever they may be to make you guys more impactful in your work. So one way to think about these multi-agent systems is it allows you to build agents that are really task focused, right? So instead of necessarily having to take an agent, and if you want it to approach and support an entire business process, you would need knowledge for all the kind of steps along the way in that business process. You can now do smaller, more focused agents where you can really narrow in both the actions that agent can take, as well as the knowledge that agent is grounded in, and keep it really focused so that agent has, isn't as likely to go pull some information from a knowledge source that's really intended for some other step down the line in the process, and potentially come back with less robust results. And the other thing to know is that the process map, so when you are running an agent and kind of testing it out, you get that process map on the side that shows you, hey, I'm in this topic and it's calling this connector and it's doing this and it's doing that. As you orchestrate and start to wire up agents together, in that process map, it will include, I'm now calling this other agent for this intent and purpose. And that will be included in the process map. So you'll have that traceability when it comes to debugging and continually optimizing and developing your agentic solutions. All right. Model Context Protocol was another big announcement that we dropped ahead of build. So that this is now generally available as of build. So Model Context Protocol, we've had our 1,400 or 1,500 plus connectors in the Power Platform historically. Those connectors, basically wrappers around a RESTful API, helpful when humans are building solutions and wiring things up, and we have that implicit understanding of what's going on. But as those APIs evolve and new capabilities are added, or certain actions are dropped out of those APIs, it requires updating that in a manual process. Model Context Protocol is basically like a connector specifically built for agents. So it includes information that helps the agents understand, hey, this action does this and that, and these are the capabilities at my fingertips as an agent. They also dynamically update. So as new capabilities are either retired or added to the Model Context Protocol server, the agent implicitly understands, oh, I have this new capability at my fingertips. This will expand what I'm able to take advantage of as an agent with access to this other data system. And also the data will be real time. So that's similar to the previous Power Platform connectors where you're getting real time data in, but just good to know that that data, right, if you're calling to a backend through a Model Context Protocol server, you're going to get real time data right back. And also we announced that for our Dynamics 365 portfolio, they're deploying, I should have grabbed if that was in preview or when that's coming generally available, but they basically did a big announcement in the Dynamics space at Build around an MCP connector for Dynamics. So you can reach back to all those Dataverse tables on the back end of Dynamics. And pull them into agents and have less manual work keeping that up to date as that evolves moving into the future. The computer use tool is another capability that we announced for agents developed in Copilot Studio. So think of this as, we brought in agent flows into Copilot Studio to automate different processes and execute kind of discrete steps, have agents execute those discrete steps. That's kind of like Power Automate Cloud Flows being, or certain capabilities of Power Automate Cloud Flows. This is kind of the RPA side of things. So now from an agent, you can have it wired up to a VM. It can go into that VM and with a description of what it's supposed to accomplish, what different applications to leverage for that. It can understand the user elements without explicitly having to be, traditionally in the RPA world, like this is your button, this is where it looks like, this is where it's located, pixel, a pixel mapping on the screen. If that button moves, potentially your RPA flow breaks. Now an AI agent can go in and rationalize over the user interface just like a human would and understand, hey, that's the save button, whether it's in the top left or the top right, or maybe it's in the bottom center of the screen and it says save versus having a disk. It's going to understand that all those things are basically like, hey, it's a save button. I can click it. I can go open files. I can pull data out. So for those different systems that don't have APIs where we can't programmatically leverage APIs or an MCP server to connect to that backend data, you can now use the computer using tool, or I shouldn't say now because it's available for customers who are in the Frontier program and have 500,000 plus Copilot Studio messages. So this is very like bleeding edge for us. But this is coming, right? So understand that this is on the roadmap. They're working really hard on this. But for those systems that don't have APIs or MCP servers, you can still interact with those systems, pull data out to retrieve information, knowledge for your agents to use, as well as take action in those systems. So updating records and whatever else you need to do. And the computer use tool, right, can be applied in both agents that basically are explicitly kicked off by a human with a chat interface or otherwise, as well as autonomous agents as well. Last thing I want to cover for computer use tool, it's going to include traceability as well, right? So as you have these agents going into this VM and doing a bunch of work, we don't want it to be a black box. So we're going to have real-time testing capabilities. You're going to get screenshots of it taking action along the way and also recording kind of its reasoning steps and its thought process as it's executing on those machines, just so that you have full traceability. Code Interpreter was another announcement And this is a tool in Copilot Studio that allows you to both generate and run Python code as part of your agents. So whether you need that Python code to run math calculations, do advanced analytics, or even generate visualizations, you'll be able to have the agent do that for you. And then as that code is generated, you'll be able to basically save off that code snippet as a component and then reuse that across agents to scale. So for those of us who don't like to write Python or aren't proficient in writing Python, but want the capability and the power of being able to run Python scripts and do things with Python code, now we have this capability in the tool where an agent basically helps you write that code and then can execute it at runtime within the context of different end users leveraging the agent. So this just expands the aperture of capability for the agents you're building and also increases the ability for different individuals who maybe don't have a background in working with Python code to take advantage of what Python code can offer. And this one is in public preview. One of the last big features before I shift into the governance side of Copilot Studio announcements is bring your own model from Azure AI Foundry. So this is in public preview as of May. This allows you to bring in models from Azure AI Foundry, both as a tool, which is in public preview, and then bringing in these models to do answers within a particular topic. That's going to be in private preview currently, and we'll go to public preview and general availability later. So Azure AI Foundry has over 1,900 models available today, and obviously that's growing. As models are made available on Azure, you can use this capability in Copilot Studio to bring those models into Copilot Studio and take advantage of them as soon as they're deployed on Azure. That's to contrast with traditionally the product group to build it into the actual platform would have to do a whole bunch of red teaming and everything else to make sure it's secure. If you want to adopt that responsibility and work on the Azure side to deploy it and everything else, and you can even tune these models on Azure and then deploy them into Copilot Studio. If you want to do that legwork for yourself to get access to those models even sooner in the agents that you're building in Copilot Studio, you now have the capability to do so. And as I mentioned, these models can be fine-tuned and then deployed out into Copilot Studio. So on the management side, so a lot of the announcements we just covered were kind of, hey, tools for developing agents, tools for connecting agents to other agents, to different data sources on the back end. Chris Lappinghouse highlighted for M365 Copilot and different agents, setting capacity limits. You can do that for standalone agents built in Copilot Studio in the Power Platform Admin Center. You can set hard limits now. That's kind of one of the big different points of differentiation. So you will get notifications and warnings as you're approaching the threshold. But for IT admins that really want to set a hard ceiling and not run the risk of having an agent kind of either go viral within the organization and run up a big bill, which generally we tend to think would probably be a good thing because it usually means that more users are getting value out of it. But otherwise, if it's not architected well and it's incurring more cost than it otherwise should, you can set some limits and some hard caps. And when it hits that cap, the agent basically returns a response of saying, it's unable to provide a response or something to that effect. So you can now set those limits in the Power Platform Admin Center. I didn't see any announcements or sessions. There may have been some breakout sessions that covered all the security enhancements. There is a Copilot Studio security blog that went up that had I don't know, like 10 different announcements of things that they're bringing into the platform to help with security around agents built in Copilot Studio. The link on this slide should be clickable, so feel free to click that and just keep that up in the browser. If I'm way too boring, you can just start reading it now, or you can just have it in the browser and wait for later. And go read through those if security is kind of in your area of concern for your organization, or you can just have it and send it over to your security team later and be like, look, we have all this great stuff at our fingertips. Please give me the green light to do more with Copilot Studio. So there's that, and then there's also we released a Copilot Studio Agent Estimator. So this is another big ask. Customers have been trying to figure out, hey, depending on how I build my agent and what different capabilities I'm including, how much should I expect this to cost, right? We're always looking at business impact, business value. You always need to know what sort of value is it going to provide for the organization, and then how much is it going to cost, and what is that roll up to in terms of an ROI? How do we make a business justification to our leaders to help us unlock these tools and do more and drive more impact for our organizations? So we now have an estimator out there. You can go hit the QR code or hit the link. That link should be clickable as well on this slide. Everyone will get this deck and the recording once we're done. So if you miss it, don't worry about it, but you can go into the Copilot Studio Agent Estimator and get an estimate for, and it gives you, right, it's not super, super precise, but it gives you a good ballpark to enable, you know, concrete discussions around business value with your leaders. So as you're looking at use cases, you can understand which ones you want to prioritize, which ones you maybe want to potentially say no to. But really have a concrete understanding of what you want to go after and how. And then the other thing I'll plug is just from an adoption standpoint. We have a new Copilot Studio adoption page. I think that link is clickable as well, so you can go check that out. A lot of new content up there on the Copilot Studio adoption page. And some other announcements that I'll just make reference to. Feel free to hit me up if you want more details on any of these. But we have a new tools tab in the Copilot Studio IDE for reusable components. So whether that's model context protocol servers, agent flows, computer using agents, custom connectors, REST APIs, or AI prompts, all of those are going in a big tools tab so that you can reuse those capabilities across agents. And we also have some new autonomous agent templates. So for those agents that are triggering on events and kicking off in the background and basically going to work without a human prompting them, we now have templates for document processing, creating customer briefs, and also doing lead management. Those templates are in preview. And the tools tab is coming preview in June, so that should be dropping within the next, I was going to say week, but the way we usually do things, it could be coming later on towards the end of June. Also, last thing I want to plug is in Dataverse, you now have prompt columns. So just like you used to have formula columns where you could say, hey, you know, add these columns and then multiply it by this other column and, you know, put the result in this column. You can now have a column that's driven by an LLM pulling content from other columns, applying a standard prompt to that, and then taking the output and writing it into that prompt column. And that's all done automatically on the back end, kind of running at the service layer. So you now have prompt columns in Dataverse, which is pretty cool. And then also mirrored, Dataverse being mirrored in Fabric, preview coming in June. So just additional capabilities to unify all your enterprise data together in Fabric and doing mirroring with Dataverse, which is pretty awesome. With that, I think I'm about at time, so I will hand off to Metul. As I mentioned, bring your own models from Azure AI Foundry. You're going to hear a lot more about the capabilities of Azure AI Foundry. Thank you for tuning in. And Metul, you are up.
Thanks, David. Hey, everyone. My name is Metul Shah. I'm a principal Azure Apps and AI technical specialist. So I probably, you've not seen me on these calls before, but we wanted to include a section on Azure agents because that is the kind of underlying technology for a lot of what we've discussed so far. And as you're going through and building agents, just for you to understand the options that you have available for you. I'm actually joining you live from Seattle, where I had the opportunity to attend Build this week, earlier in the week. And so I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit about what I learned and tell you about kind of the exciting energy that was in the rooms when we were talking about some of these great new features. So with that, we'll kind of move forward. At the beginning, I just want to talk a little bit about some kind of themes that you might hear from us as we're talking about Azure AI Foundry. And we really think about Azure AI Foundry now as the agent factory within Azure. There are several different components to consider when building out those agents. Models obviously are key to understand the reasoning and content that is being developed by the agent. An orchestration system lets agents process workflow or work autonomously. And really, to make your agent successful, it has to know about the real world, whether that's going to be just general knowledge, whether that's going to be access to your business processes via tools, and then being able to observe and trust what that agent is doing on your behalf. So we'll talk about each of these aspects and the tools and announcements that we have available for you. I'm only going to give the broad strokes here. There were hundreds and hundreds of announcements. So we'll give you the big themes. But if you want to talk in more detail about Azure AI Foundry and all of its capabilities, or just anything in Azure, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to set up a further discussion. Okay, so we're going to start today's discussion with Azure AI Foundry as a basis for creating agents. And to understand kind of the tools that you're going to use to enhance your agent factory, you can kind of think of the different components that you're seeing here as machinery in your agent factory, right? So first thing we're going to start with is the model catalog or the Foundry models. And just as a bit of history, when we started Azure AI Foundry in its earliest stages several years ago, there were only one or two models available, GPT 3.5 from OpenAI and GPT-4, and a couple of embedding models, some smaller models. But there's been an absolute explosion of foundation models from a variety of different vendors, that you can see here, each with various capabilities and relative efficiency. And we've broadened this catalog even further. So we announced availability of Grok from XAI. That's available already. And then we have FluxPro 1.1 from Black Forest Labs. That's coming soon. And then OpenAI's video model Sora is also coming soon in preview. We have over actually 10,000 models from Hugging Face as well. And so, I know David mentioned earlier the 1,900 models that are available. That list is continuing to grow, and we just announced a deal with Hugging Face to expand that model catalog even further. Now, that doesn't limit ourselves just to foundational models, but there are also industry models and scientific models and other capabilities listed there that cover a broader range of capabilities that your agents can leverage. So it's not just those premier large language models, but really a broad set of models that you can explore and compare. We're also supporting full fine-tuning of models. so that you can tailor fine-tunable models to your specific needs. That could be for a specific task, or to be able to answer questions in a way that is closer to your organization's culture or that sort of thing. And as part of that capability, we're announcing a new developer tier for fine-tuning that allows for zero hosting fees for 24 hours. So you can try to fine-tune a model, see if it's going to work for your use case, and if it doesn't work, scrap it, and you don't have to pay for that large expense. If you want to continue to use it, that's when you would pay for that capability. The other thing is that choosing the right model is going to become easier. For one, if you're using Azure OpenAI, we introduced a model router capability, which basically selects the correct model based on your prompt. So that you can, let's say you have a particular task that is going to require some thought, or it's going to require a chain of thought, then it will choose the correct model. Otherwise, if you have a prompt that is going to require just a normal type of model, then you can use a different model in that scenario. And so the model router would automatically select the optimal Azure OpenAI model for your specific prompt. That's going to help you boost quality for your solution, as well as reduce the amount of cost that you have occurring. We're also, from a cost perspective, extending reserved capacity. So if you're familiar with reserved capacity or provision throughput, if you've heard of that capability. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. If you're familiar with provision throughput, the capability there allows you to guarantee a certain amount of throughput by basically placing a reservation for your model. That has been limited to Azure OpenAI up until now, but for selected Foundry models moving forward, you will also get that capability introduced in the coming weeks. And so you will be able to place a reservation for things like Mistral, Meta, XAI, and DeepSeek. All of these models are going to be accessible through the unified Azure AI Foundry API, as well as through things like Model Context Protocol that David mentioned, so that you will have the ability to connect your models to any of your different applications. All right, moving on to the Foundry agent service itself. So Azure AI Foundry agent service is now generally available. So it had been in preview up until now, but we announced general availability. What that service does is it empowers you to design, deploy, and scale production-grade AI agents with ease. It's a fully managed service. It takes care of things like infrastructure and orchestration, and it comes with ready-to-use templates, actions, and connectors to more than 1,400 enterprise data sources, such as SharePoint, Fabric, and third-party systems. So if this sounds familiar, yes, we hear you on this. And actually, Copilot Studio, some of those capabilities are built on top of what I'm talking about here. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of where you use each of those capabilities in just a second. With a few clicks, you can deploy your agents into Microsoft 365, Teams and Office apps, and other platforms like Slack and Twilio. And so you can bring your agents directly into the tools that you or your customers or your employees are using every day. Real-world workflows often require multiple agents working together, and Azure AI Foundry now makes that easy across any cloud. Agents can call each other as tools. That's kind of the connected agent or collaboration scenario, passing tasks between specialized agents to solve complex problems collaboratively, or they can use multi-agent workflows, which provide a stateful layer to manage context, handle errors, maintain long-running processes. And those are great for scenarios like financial approvals or supply chain operations. And then we've implemented those capabilities on top of open interoperability standards such as A2A, as was mentioned earlier in the chat. A2A, honestly, that it's a very early in that process. The protocol itself doesn't have much to it at this point, but we've announced a commitment to work with Google in developing that protocol. But more importantly, Model Context Protocol, MCP, which is much closer to an industry standard, is something that we're investing in heavily, and it enables agents to share and interpret contextual data. Those standards ensure that agents can collaborate seamlessly across Azure, AWS, Google, on-premises, and under the hood are frameworks, semantic kernel, autogen, are updated to support this kind of seamless agent orchestration. Lastly, I want to mention that, since I talked about semantic kernel and autogen, that those frameworks are now being unified so that you will see aspects of autogen go into semantic kernel. Semantic kernel is the productionized framework that we are going to use for our production applications, and some of the ideas that you see in autogen will make its way into semantic kernel. As of now, they're using a unified platform, and then features will start to go into semantic kernel as we start to move forward. Okay, if we're talking about truly enterprise-ready AI solutions, it's not just about the model, it's about the entire ecosystem. So we're going to talk about trust and how we can build trust for those agents. But a lot of it is about enterprises being able to implement agents in their existing infrastructure and technology standards. And so the AI agent service has a lot of capabilities where you can bring your own. So bring your own file storage, bring your own search index, bring your own virtual network, bring your own thread storage. Those are all capabilities that if you already have infrastructure, we can seamlessly integrate with that infrastructure rather than you having to adopt something brand new that maybe you don't quite trust. Secondly is choice, given flexible models. Obviously, Azure OpenAI being one of our premier models, but being able to leverage Llama and Mistral and Cohere and other models within the model catalog for your agents. And then having tools, both knowledge and actions, that integrate with your existing enterprise systems. That could be Fabric, SharePoint, grounding in Bing Search, AI Search, as well as other Azure services such as Logic Apps functions and APIs that you already have running in your Azure environment or in your on-premise environment. All right, since we're talking a lot about agents, maybe let's talk a little bit about how you might think about Foundry agents in the broader landscape. And I've seen this slide actually several times in build this week, and so it's kind of the message that we're settling on, which is in the same way that you understand cloud technologies such as IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, PaaS, which is platform as a service, and SaaS, which is software as a service, you can think about that as far as our agent capabilities as well. So on the left, you would have an agent that you built completely from scratch using your own frameworks. You host it on our GPU-enabled hardware, and that becomes your agent. Or you can leverage a platform like Azure AI Foundry agents to build your agents, maintain a little bit more control and customization, but having some guardrails and some ways to kind of shortcut the process and have it hosted on your behalf, or leveraging a platform like Copilot Studio, which is going to let you build that same type of agent in a drag and drop kind of UI studio, and have that agent run instantly with the Copilot Studio runtime. So just a way to kind of think about when you're determining where you want to put an agent, how to think about where the agent should go in those scenarios. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about observability. To hold agents accountable in production, you need visibility into their performance. And so we're previewing as of build a new Foundry observability capability and features that provide end-to-end monitoring and diagnostics. So you'll get built-in metrics on latency, throughput, usage, and quality. But on top of that, you'll get detailed trace log of each agent's reasoning steps and tool calls. And so you can see exactly what an agent is doing when it's working on your behalf. During development, the agent's playground now shows things like evaluation benchmarks and those similar traces that I mentioned. And that'll help you refine prompts and logic as you're building out your agent. And then as you move to more of a standardized CI/CD approach, we're integrating with both GitHub and Azure DevOps to incorporate things like testing and adding guardrails. And in production, you get a unified dashboard integrated with Azure Monitor that's going to give you real-time insight and alerting for your models and agents. So just like any other Azure service that you would deploy into production, you can monitor and manage your production agents. Okay. We would be remiss if we're talking about productionizing an agent if we didn't talk about end-to-end security. So the first big thing that we announced around agents in Azure is this idea that each agent that you develop is going to have what's called an agent ID in Entra. It's the first step really to managing your agent identity in your organization. It gives you full visibility and control over what your agent can do. It acts basically just like any other entity within Entra. So it could be like a user or a managed identity or service account. Agents get that first class kind of ID within Entra. And that will let you manage your identities exactly like you would human users. They appear in your directory, so you can see what agents are in your environment. You can set access controls and permissions for each of those agents. And then coming soon, admins will be able to apply things like conditional access policies, multi-factor auth, and least privilege roles to those agents, and then monitor things like their sign-in activities. And so really it starts to be like an agent is another employee within your organization. So if an agent shouldn't access a resource, it would be blocked just like a regular user would. So that was something I know that many folks had tried to tackle before, but now we've got a really good solution in place. Not only the Entra side of things, but we also have responsible AI, and that's a non-negotiable for us when we're talking about building new services. So we've added new capabilities around discovering, protecting, and governing AI systems. Agent evaluators automatically check if an agent is following user intent and using tools correctly, flagging issues if that happens for developers to kind of go follow up on. An AI red teaming agent is now available for probing your agents for vulnerabilities or biases, and allows you to fix weaknesses before you deploy that agent into a production environment. And then content filtering has gotten better with spotlighting, which takes the prompt shield capability and better detects and mitigates malicious prompt injections, and specifically ones typically that will come from incoming data rather than the prompt itself. So that's kind of a space where we've seen newer attacks coming in, is where a agent requires knowledge outside of the prompt itself, that things like that get injected, prompt injections get injected into that data, and that makes its way into the agent's instructions. We've also enabled guardrails to prevent agents from revealing sensitive PII information or straying off of approved tasks. And then on the security side, Foundry integrates with Defender for Cloud, so you can erase alerts when threats occur. We have out-of-the-box integration with other governance tools like Credo AI or SciDot. And then we also have support for Purview. So Purview can track model performance, fairness, and that sort of thing. So I want to talk a little bit about security features that we announced as well. I want to talk a little bit about AI search. So a lot of the first set of applications that organizations rolled out based on the retrieval augmented generation capability, or RAG, relied on kind of existing search capabilities. So let's say today's search and RAG systems, if I search for, kind of similar to how you'd interact with voice control in your car, you would need to give kind of a short set of words, or commands, and realistically, no one really barks commands like that in real conversations. And so what works today, like security updates, KB404, A959, that's not going to work in the future, and it doesn't really work in real conversations. But the example on the right, what does that KB article fix? What systems is it patch compatible with? That requires several different things, right? It requires both context about what KB 404.8959 actually does. It also has context on the rest of the conversation. There's a misspelled word, so it needs to understand that there, potentially is something syntactically that we'll have to fix first. So there's a whole bunch of capabilities that we can leverage AI to help us try to solve and then apply to our search results. And so what we announced as part of our capabilities is the idea of agentic retrieval within Azure AI Search. So agentic retrieval is a multi-turn query engine designed for complex questions. So it uses the context and an embedded LLM to break down user queries into subqueries, run multiple searches in parallel, and then retrieves search results and compiles them into a merged set of results with citations. And this approach actually improves answer relevance up to about 40% in complex multi-part questions, based on some studies. And so that capability in public preview is something you definitely want to look at if AI search has worked for you, but hasn't worked quite as well as you have expected. So I wanted to call that out as well, because capabilities that require things like AI search are very common for our customer use cases. Last thing I want to mention here is actually not necessarily exactly related to AI Foundry, but if we're talking about building in AI Foundry, we want to also talk about how to build. And so one of the main themes that you might have seen if you attended Build is this idea of agentic DevOps. So it's not only using AI to build new applications, but it's actually using AI to help build applications. Agentic DevOps is a way where AI agents actually help developers and IT teams throughout the software process, from writing code to fixing issues in production. These assistants can take on common, repetitive tasks, suggest improvements, even help solve problems so that teams can focus and move faster. So I'll call out kind of the three areas where we announced new capabilities. Agent mode actually was announced quite a bit before build, but we definitely took the opportunity to highlight it. So agent mode in GitHub Copilot allows for a developer to delegate some repetitive or complex task to an AI agent that's going to understand the developer's local context, write code on that developer's behalf, and suggest architectural improvements. The developer can be as involved or disinvolved in that activity as much as he or she wants. And that's happening kind of at the coding level. And it's more of a kind of pair programmer paradigm. In the build and maintain phase, we introduced this idea of a coding agent which lives in GitHub itself. It integrates tightly with things like GitHub repositories, issues, and GitHub actions. And the coding agent can actually automatically triage issues, generate pull requests, and even can orchestrate CI/CD workflows. And it really frees up developers to focus on actual innovation rather than some repetitive tasks or maintenance and that sort of thing. And then lastly, once we've built and maintained and deployed our solution, we have the SRE agent that works alongside Azure and AI Foundry. And that's going to monitor our systems, detect anomalies, and even propose and implement fixes on our behalf. It's really where DevOps becomes proactive, where agents can help maintain uptime, performance, and reduce the operational aspects of deploying a solution. Together, these agents form a connected, intelligent system that accelerates delivery and improves quality and really keeps developers working on the things that matter to them. And it's not just automation, right? It's collaboration between the developer and the Copilot. So I have slides to talk a little bit about each one. Agent mode really focuses on, again, the developer working on their own system, helping you accomplish what you plan to build, automate the coding of some of the aspects of that particular solution, and leveraging tools like being able to run terminal commands, editing files on your behalf, calling MCP tools to be able to work on your code. Coding agent, again, works in GitHub to offload some of your specific work items. The GitHub coding agent will create a pull request. It can honor things like linting and automated testing, and you can provide direct feedback and ask for updates. And so the coding agent will iterate on its own code. And then you can also customize its environment by adding additional instructions or adding in tools via MCP. And then we have that Azure SRE agent that I mentioned as well. I know we touched on just the surface. I saw that there was maybe some stuff in the chat that I'll take a look at and see if I can answer. But hopefully that gave you a small glimpse into the hundreds of announcements we made. I've only, again, touched the surface, but we're really looking forward to seeing what you all build. I'll turn it over to Jeffrey.
Yeah, thanks, Matul. Great content. Sorry about, I'll go ahead and apologize. Sorry about the beginning of the call. If you've been here for the whole 90 minutes, I had my kids walk in looking for some paper. It's the beginning of the summer. So thanks to Chris, thanks to David, thanks to Matul. This has been some great content. I hope everybody got something of it. If you didn't, please do reach out to us and let us know what might be missing, not only from the announcements that we have here, but again, we're constantly accepting feedback and things that we can bring to our product group to make changes to the product to make them easier for you guys to use. So again, thanks. Enjoy the extended weekend. Everyone, be safe. I will be posting everything to the Master Series Hub, along with the slideware and some great links, and of course, the recording from today's session. David, did you have something that you wanted to add before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, two more quick plugs. Just since I'm sharing for Power Platform people, we have our community conference coming up in October. Hit the QR code, hit the link. I believe it's clickable on the screen. So please join us and come out. We love being able to meet you guys in person. And then also just thank you. Here's the QR code and the link to the Master Series portal where you can get the slide deck and the recording, which will be up soon, as Jeff announced. And then in the chat, I dropped a link to Microsoft's Book of News from Build. So a lot of the announcements we covered today and some we didn't cover, the like big high level announcements, the big heavy hitters are all in that Book of News. And there are also links to demos, other resources, blog posts by the product group. And then also if you want to go from an announcement to like a build breakout session that specifically covers that topic, they have links to those build breakout sessions. You can watch them back. You can watch them back on 2x speed to save yourself from time. So really good resource there to keep deep diving on everything. And as Jeff said, for all of us in the US who are celebrating Memorial Day on Monday, have a great weekend and a great long weekend for those of us celebrating. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.